Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Trencher number 1 through 4 and Trencher, the Xmas Bites 1994 Holiday Blowout. These were written and drawn by Keith Giffen. This is the early days of Image Comics, and one of the few creator-owned titles that Keith Giffen ever created. I think the only other one up to this point was The March Hare, that black and white 80s comic, which is pretty interesting. One day I'd like to show that off to you guys too. But this comic is amazing just for the art style. So Keith Giffen came around professional comics in the 70s. All of his career, he was kind of notorious even, for aping other people's styles. When he started out, especially on his Defenders run, he was blatantly doing this like 70s Kirby homage, if you want to call it that. Doing the crazy Kirby squiggles for musculature, Kirby crackle, kind of blocky figures. He wasn't emulating the like more popular, smoother late 60s Marvel style of Kirby. He was full on doing that 70s wonky Kirby. And I kind of liked it, but it's pretty blatant appropriation of his style. Then when in the early 80s, he took over Legion of Superheroes for DC. That was another, you wouldn't even recognize him. And it's almost like he was trying to do like a Kurt Swan, just a very simple, classic DC style. Not my favorite style in his career because it's kind of mundane and just not that interesting. And then in the 80s, he discovered Jose Munoz. And man, he really went to town on that guy. He's the artist, actually, that some people have accused of, like, outright plagiarism. I've seen panels in comparison between the two. And at the time, Keith Giffen really was just completely swiping panels, page design work from Munoz. It looked great, though. And I didn't know much Jose Munoz at the time, so it was new to me. And so it was the most bizarre mainstream style ever, because it's like Jose Munoz drawing comics for DC. It looked just like it. And then, of course, he changed from that, kind of went back to a more sedate style, maybe if that's the word. Still pretty different than any other comic artist. But that's the amazing thing about this art. Finally, in 1993, it's like all of these influences finally coalesced and gave Keith Giffen this utterly unique drawing style, which I've never seen anything like it. Like, I would love to show this to, like, I hope this was reprinted in, like, France. I can't even think of a European artist who had such a crazy, unique style. He worked with Simon Bisley on Lobo, of course, during the 90s. There's definitely some of that added to the mix, too. Basically, the over-the-top testosterone fueled this. But it's really just this completely unique style. And we shall see. Here's the first cover, as you can see. Look at this. Nobody draws like this. He's having a lot of fun in this comic. Look at like even the Image logo and the price box. He's just like, just having fun. Like, you know, just all the design elements he's really thinking about. Even though it kind of looks rough hewn, it's he's definitely thinking about every page as a unit of design. God, I love this art style so much. We have here a little like exclamatory kind of page, the Division of Karmic Designation. And apparently, since 1900, due to bad management, there's been like well over 1,000 souls that were wrongly reincarnated. And so this division is basically has agents like Trencher who have to reclaim these souls, or repossess them, if you will. Like a repo man for souls. So we start off in Miami, and a lot of this, I'm not even sure exactly what's going on. I think Keith Giffen is so into this new art style that he developed that he doesn't really care about classic storytelling, about making things clear. So in a way, this is almost like not good comics, because sometimes there's many pages and panels in here where I'm not sure what I'm looking at. There's a body. It looks like a lump of something. I can't even see where the arm is. Things like that. So we'll see. Just a lot of weird stuff too. Like we see a traffic light and someone's throwing a beer can at it. We never meet the guy who does it. It's irrelevant. And then there's this giant tidal wave apparently threatening Miami, and really has nothing to do with the story. I'm not quite sure why there is a tidal wave, but perhaps it's because we see this giant force bolt from the sky. Look at this stuff. It's pretty much just abstract art. And what we find out is this force bolt from the heavens is actually like the transmission beam to bring Trencher to Earth. So he's on a mission. And we see the tidal wave. Totally looks like it's knocking Miami over. But it doesn't matter. Nothing to do with the story. And here we have the title page, Life Sucks, and Then You Come Back. This is showing like how playful Giffen's Giffen, he has a little arrow here. Title. He does all kind of cutesy things like that. Trencher is so obviously it's almost like a parody of every other Image comic. Look at his costume. It has all these leather straps and stuff. Just an embarrassment of them. It's kind of ridiculous. But I really like the design. It looks pretty cool, I gotta say. So right when he lands, already this soul that he's got to repossess pops up. And it's a superhero or supervillain called the Nasal Python. That's so ludicrous. He has a necklace, like a trophy necklace of noses, people's noses. I guess he ripped them off. And Trencher starts a big fight with him. So there's barely any plot and story in all these first 4 issues. It's totally reminds me of that Scott McCloud comic Destroy from the 80s. It's basically one long fight scene. Every issue is just a huge, crazy, mayhem-filled fight scene. So he's fighting the Nasal Python. Not much to say because not much is going on. I should mention the colors and letters on this are by Laverne Kinzerski. And as you can see, the colors are really nice. Really complement the craziness of Keith Giffen's penciling and inking. And it seems like they were pretty simpatico. But that lettering it's a very early computer lettering program. And it's really terrible. I know it's just lettering, but sometimes it really took me out of the comic because look at Keith Giffen's art. This is such vibrant, over-the-top, in-your-face, kind of rough-hewn art. And this lettering is just sitting there dead and lifeless, like a turd in a punch bowl. It's so lame and terrible. But at least his colors are nice. But this is the kind of over-the-top violence, it's obviously his years on Lobo. This is very influenced by Lobo. And Trencher punches him so hard, it just rips his chin off, and the chin is stuck to his fist. But here's what I'm talking about. There's lots of panels where I'm not even sure what I'm seeing here. I'm like, yeah, that's the Nasal Python, but I can't see where his arm is. It's just kind of a weird lump. It looks so good, though. That's a great panel. All the design elements in it. But not very clear what's going on. Trencher finally just punches him in the stomach, and look at this. This is another sign of how playful he's being. There's no sound effect here. It doesn't say splorch or squelch, but it shows a pictogram that says it's a bag of spam being dropped from 5 stories. The sound that makes is the sound of Trencher punching through this guy and ripping all his guts out. I've never seen that device, a pictogrammic sound effect. Death rattle, and we actually see a little rattle with a skull on it. So as you can see, they're very cartoony. So it actually takes the money off the nasal python's corpse. The whole time he's basically he's in contact with his dispatcher, Phoebe. And they kind of have this fun, argumentative relationship. She's always giving him shit over the headpiece, his earpiece or whatever. And he's always just like, stop riding me. Get off my back. Once again, it's just not quite sure what I'm looking at, but it looks so good. Trencher gets a hotel room to rest for the night. Look at that great caricatured face. Just all of this is so good. The weird thing is, too, is Keith Giffen had this style only for like a year or two. He did Trencher. He did Images of Shadowhawk miniseries with Alan Grant in this style. And then he kind of abandoned it and went back to a kind of a definitely not as good style. It's a damn shame. But then again, maybe this takes a lot of work. I mean, it is kind of loose looking, but it also looks like just the crazy designs of everything. The way he abstracts everything and everything's all rubbery and bending. Maybe it's a lot of like mental work trying to come up with this stuff. We see like an almost Family Circus Jeffy like thing showing his path. So Trencher's on to his next assignment. Another soul he has to reclaim. And he comes to this apartment, finds the name he's looking for. It says C. Noble. And it's this little old lady. She seems very nice. And she says, let me do one thing. Collect some things before, you do your job. There's lots of also like kind of chicken fat jokes in the background. A lot of them at the expense of the other image creators. Here's the Rob Liefeld superhero Die Hard, but he's the Energizer Bunny, like a parody of that. Love this stuff. Such good design work. So while she's in this other room, supposedly gathering her things or something, he sees a picture that says, "To share, love hair swastika." We also see a grifter. A nod to Grifter from Jim Lee's Wildcats. And he finally puts it together. And if you already haven't, it's a bad pun. Her name's Cher Noble. So he realizes like, it's Cher Noble. God damn it. Suckered like a rookie. Another amazing panel. Bloomed. That's quite a sound effect. So Cher Noble basically is this, she was a Nazi in the World War II, but she's still kicking. And I guess she has the power to just blow things up. She's like a human bomb. The first explosion just rips Trencher in half. So Trencher is very hard to kill. He's almost impossible to kill. He's like a cartoon character. And so his legs are all ripped off. His spine is popping out here. And he's crawling around. And Cher Noble finds him, and so a little cliffhanger till next issue. Here we have a little dossier page on the nasal python. All pretty funny stuff. A letter page, and some ads. This is kind of interesting. This is, I guess, an ad for Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. But I've never seen an Understanding Comics ad in an Image comic before. And just by the way that Keith Giffen just drew this, So this is basically like a new pinup, because this is new art. So it's kind of nice to have. It looks like Keith Giffen just really was impressed by understanding comics and wanted to give it a shout out and wanted to promote the book. Because when that book did come out, everyone was blown away by it. So it's kind of nice getting a little free pinup. Number 2. See, once again, he's just playing around with he's just having a good time. And the logo has changed now, so the T in Trencher is Trencher's back. I've never seen a comic character who part of his design is supposed to look good from the back. So many of the shots here are Trencher from behind, and he's got such a distinctive body type that it's almost like his trademark look is him from behind. So now we start where we left off. It's a crazy design for Chernobyl. And so now she blows off his arm. So Trencher's just hopping around his stumpy body with one arm, trying to escape her. But once again, it's almost hard to read the choreography of the fight. I think Keith Giffen's more involved with just playing around with his fun new art style, and just drawing what he wants to draw, like cool designs and stuff. This is almost another thing, like talking about his love of Kirby. Not that this looks anything like Kirby, but just the way Kirby would have a few squiggles to represent the muscle in a thigh. Look at this like crazy line work to show like she's basically got a 6-pack. She's this muscular old woman. But it doesn't really look like anything in human anatomy, but it works. When you look at it, you totally get the idea. When you look closely at it, though, you're like, where did that come from? Why would you think those lines could, represent that? But they do. It works great. So she keeps blowing him up. Bloomed. God, just completely mindless, this comic. It's really dopey. But it's almost like Keith Giffen, I think, is making fun of his his Image compatriots. This is like the ultimate Image comic. I like all these interesting, just like kooky panels. Well, he does a lot of this, like the rough-hewn panel border. So it has this almost like speedy quality, like he's dashing this shit off. But I don't know if maybe he had the style nailed down. It's a very intricate style, but it also has this appearance of just being like slashed onto the page. Fast and sloppy. And this is once again where the storytelling is not that great. There's many scenes in this comic where I'm not sure what's going on. So even though like Trencher was on the run from Chernobyl, and then there's this explosion, another explosion, and all of a sudden Chernobyl, her brain is leaking out of her body, her robot brain, and she's half dead. But she's still going, though, since she's a cyborg. And Trencher leaps up off the ground with his one arm and finishes her off. Look at that. Completely different art style here. I don't know what's going on. It's almost like a Japanese art, with the brush. Once again, a little, her dying sound is like, instead of writing a word or sound effect, it's a chicken being choked. A pictogram of that. So then he, basically, it takes him a day to regenerate. He's basically unkillable. So now he's back to himself, and he's off to complete his next assignment. They send him to Tucson, Arizona, and which he spells wrong, Tucson. And his next assignment is this guy, the Hurler, who has the power to vomit very forcefully. He finds him in a bar. Man, I really like these colors. Good stuff. And I really hate those letters. Look at this stuff. This is so dopey. This is like the best comic if you were like 14 or 15, I imagine, though. Look at that. I guess another thing, even though this doesn't look like Kirby, but just that whole 3D coming at you that Kirby was so good at. Even if the anatomy was slightly off, it just, shit would leap off the page at you. And that's what that panel does. Just more mindless violence, over-the-top silliness. It's great body language there. Completely unrealistic. I don't know if anyone would bend like that to shoot. Like, it would just... Well, I mean, he's not human, so of course he can do anything. And then the mighty Saguaro shows up. I guess he's the local Tucson superhero. And he has a little debate with Trencher. And Trencher just smacks him. He's not a reclaimed soul, though. Or an errant soul, so he doesn't kill him. God, I love this stuff. And then Supreme shows up. Rob Liefeld's Superman knockoff. And I guess he's Trencher's on his radar now, and he's going to take care of him. And we'll find out next issue what happens. We have a one-page comic strip here. This is very weird throughout this miniseries. Apparently, Keith Giffen around this time had a serious bug up his ass about the polybag comics. That was a thing in the early 90s. Comics would come with a little bag, usually to hold like posters or trading cards in, like extras. And it was even at the point where, like, oh, if you want to sell this comic back to the store, or if you take it out of the bag, it's not worth as much. But the thing is these bags were made of this kind of plastic that would degenerate and also affect your comic. If you never took it out of the bag, 10 years later, your comic would kind of be fucked up. So this really bothers him. And so he starts this whole campaign about scragging the bag. And there's going to be more about it in the other issues. Here's a dossier page on Cher Noble. This is her when she's younger, 1941. Look at this fucking hair. What the hell is going on here? It's like almost like, I don't know why, like something Matt Howarth would do. I know who would do this. It's fucking insane. Jeff Bonivert, maybe. Just really odd. And just, once again, look at that. What the fuck's up with this forearm? But when you look at it all quick, it's just like, oh yeah, that works. But then you're like, no, what the hell? It still looks amazing to me, though. So the letter page is devoted to this scrag the bag thing. Just ranting about these goddamn poly bags. He really has it out for him. We see some ads. Oh, by the way, that's an ad for that Keith Giffen Shadowhawk comic. The only other thing he did, I believe, in this cool style. More ads. And let's get to number 3. This is the big showdown with Supreme. Man, that's a pretty fun cover. So now we see Trencher's hitchhiking. The Department of Karmic, whatever it's called, they never give him a travel allowance. That's kind of a running gag. And then Supreme shows up. And I bet you can imagine what's going to happen now. It's basically, the rest of the issue is just these guys trying to kick each other's ass. That's nice. I love this too. After the explosion, I guess there's still heat shimmering. Look how he draws Supreme coming through the heat. It's all shimmering. That is a cool effect. And then I guess he punches Trencher so hard that he flies through the stratosphere and ends up in Vegas. So now we're in Vegas. Look at that crazy cartoony view of Vegas. Trencher's just flying through buildings, knocking over giant signs. They're crashing to the street from like 10 stories up. Choom. I don't think I've ever heard that sound effect word. Onomatopoeia. Look at him. He's still, the force of Supreme's punch, he's still just flying through things. The whole casino, through the chandelier. And then Supreme shows up to continue kicking his ass. Look at this. Explosive action. Oh, I love this. Trencher gets a good one in. And Supreme is flying out of the panel. That's completely 3D-ish. That is some powerful looking stuff. Once again, like I was saying though, these lines don't align to any human anatomy, but it works. Just like Kirby used to do. Like what's going on here? It's like topography of a mountain range. I don't know. But it fucking looks so good to me. So much fun to look at. This is great. He punches Trencher so hard it knocks his head off, and the head goes flying into the swimming pool. So the head of Trencher's looking up. It's still alive, of course. He can't kill Trencher. Look at this effect. Drawing the wiggliness of the looking up through water. That and the perspective, that must have been really hard to draw. Like to figure out, exactly how to do it. Really good stuff. I forgot to mention, just to show how goofy and fun Keith Giffen's having, every page is numbered, but all a different font, sometimes Roman numerals, sometimes hash marks. Just little silly things like that he's throwing in. It's almost like for the first time he didn't have Marvel or DC editing him. And he was just like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And you can kind of get that sense of unbridled, joy from this comic. He's just having a great time. So Supreme's about to finish him off, and then Phoebe makes what is it called? A nexus portal. She basically beams him out of there. And Supreme's like, what the? So she beams him to this almost safe house. And this is where other trenchers hang out. I never mentioned, not that it matters, but his name's Gideon. But I guess there's other trenchers who do the same job he does. Free the Image 7. Little poster in the back. So he meets this other guy. I don't think they even tell us his name, but he's another guy who does the same thing. He repossesses souls. Very superhero-y guy. Kind of corny and annoying. Look at this, though. Very Kirby-ish. Even doing the Kirby squiggles. Really nice. At this point, it basically Keith Giffen has appropriated and studied so many styles to get to the nuts and bolts of them that it really does seem like he could pull anything out of his ass. Any kind of stylistic flourish or design. He's really ingested all of these influences into himself and can spit them back out in this new way. So basically he's gonna hang out in this limbo until Supreme loses the scent, basically. And so after 2 weeks, he beams back down to Las Vegas, and Supreme's gone. Meanwhile, in Boston, Massachusetts, we see this shadowy figure. And It's kind of nebulous, but apparently he's going to be some big bad villain. We had a dossier page for the Hurler, some fan art from readers. And it's interesting, the letter page, Trenchmouth, he just does it as a 2-page comic. We see Trencher reading his mail. And it's like real mail, real quotes from real letters. They even have the addresses down here of all the correspondence. It's kind of nice getting 2 extra pages of great Keith Giffen art. More ads. And then the back cover is an ad for Digital Chameleon. That's Laverne Kinzerski's company. But I like the reason why I'm pointing this out. Look how great this looks in black and white. I would I'm not into those artist editions that much. I'm looking at original art, but I wouldn't mind seeing this art all in black and white. It's almost a visual overload. The art is so dense, and then Laverne Kinzerski's colors are just pretty much like Technicolor yawning on the page, and it's almost overwhelming, the visual input you're getting. Not that I'm complaining. I fucking love it. So this is another weird little half story, or not really a story. But Trencher's got a new job, new assignment. And it looks like he has to find Elvis. Elvis reincarnated and wrongfully reincarnated, and Trencher's got to repossess him. This one's called Elvis Lives. That's the title. Just can't get over this. You're not going to see art like this anywhere. Maybe some of you are thinking, I don't want to, but I do. I really like this. So basically he finds this cyborg Elvis and takes him out. But then Phoebe calls and says, wait, this is a weird anomaly. Apparently, Elvis's soul is split up into 4 separate units. Each unit housing a portion of the downloaded Elvis soul. So he's got that's just one of the Elvis reincarnations. So now he's got to find the other ones. So he's traveling around, and now he's in New Orleans. That's where the Phoebe led him to. And he sees a poster for infant Elvis, his cute little Elvis baby. And Trencher says, I don't do kids. And Phoebe's like, you got it, it's your job. He's like, I don't do kids. And this seems like a bum character note. Everything we've seen about Trencher, he's completely immoral, unethical. But they have to put this in as like a typical, macho guy trope. It's just so dumb. I don't even know why it doesn't really ring true to me. Meanwhile, we see Graceland. And it's like in the basement beneath Graceland. It's this super high-tech bunker. And we hear this guy there. We don't really see him. And he basically knows that Trencher's on to him. He's one of the reincarnated Elvis souls, or housing units. So he's worried about Trencher hunting him down. Meanwhile, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but Trencher's flying a plane to Hyannisport, Massachusetts. And Phoebe says, I didn't know you knew how to fly a plane. And he's like, I don't. So all he knew is how to fly, almost like the terrorists on 9/11. Doesn't know how to land, though, and just totally crashes the plane. But of course he's fine, because he's Trencher. More of the crazy panel stuff going on. So he finds this Elvis impersonator. Who's running from this giant robotic Elvis. I love the design on this. It's like this cool, sleek robot, but it's got all of the glitz of like Las Vegas era Fat Elvis. So once again, we're just going to have some mindless action for a little while. I like this how he punches him. The robot punches Trencher so hard, he falls into the water and he skips like a stone across the ocean, the surface, and then he comes back to continue the fight. Meanwhile, this robot, I guess, is tracking down this little Elvis guy, his impersonator, trying to kill him. It's really zany art. It's like a fisheye lens. So the robot's about to kill the Elvis impersonator. Trencher shows up. And I guess this was just like almost like a Mazinger. There's a guy in there controlling this robot. And I guess he's right. He's housed right in the butt region. So it looks like Trench is fisting this robot. And you just hear snap, ay, yank, pop, yank, skletch. And Trencher just rips this guy out of the robot. In doing so, it just turns him into a pulpy gore. It basically liquefies him. So that's another one of those souls, errant souls. And the Elvis impersonator says, hey, I'd like to, any way I can repay you? He's like, do you need a ride? And, Trencher doesn't have a good travel allowance, so he's like, sold. You got it. Thanks. So now they're going to head to Graceland. And we find out this weird thing about this comic is that the Elvis impersonator is filling in Trencher about how I guess there's almost been like a schism in the Church of Elvis. It's called the Purification. Someone basically took over Graceland. And it's the guy we saw earlier, the shadowy figure. And he basically has been like killing off other Elvis impersonators, like who he deems heretics. So this guy is considered a heretic, and that's why he sicked that robot after him. So normally he'd be scared to come within 500 miles of Graceland, but he knows that Trencher can handle himself and will kick some ass, so he's not that scared. And then the guy from the basement of Graceland comes out, and he's like super Elvis. This total like Superman Elvis hybrid. Another goofy panel border. I love this panel. So he comes down and attacks the RV. And now we got another fight. This one's over pretty quick, though. Trencher takes care of him pretty quickly. Very violently. And so the issue ends here. Well, almost ends. Where Trencher is telling Phoebe, he's like, I think I'm going to hang out with this Elvis impersonator. At least he's got wheels. And she's like, I don't know. That goes against the extended fraternization clause, the regulation. He's like, yeah, fuck you. I'm going to hang out with this guy. Then we see that shadowy figure from Boston again. And once again, we don't really know what the hell he's up to. It does seem very insidious, but we'll never find out because this is the last issue of the miniseries. Actually, maybe it wasn't a miniseries. Maybe it was just canceled. Here we have the winner of the Polybag contest. Keith Giffen actually offered original art to the person who sent in the most polybags ripped off of comics. And then the letter page, once again, is about this polybag threat. I like this. There's also a drawing of Trencher at a blackboard having to write Tucson. I will not misspell Tucson over and over because people called him on his bad spelling from the previous issue. More ads and an ad for the comic we're about to look at next. So I think about this time, Image Comics invited a lot of people to come join them. But then they kind of had a purge where a lot like Mike Grell, Jerry Ordway with his Wildstar comic, they just weren't selling as good as Image hoped. they were still probably, like, this comic probably sold more than any comic Keith Giffen ever sold in his life. Those early days of Image was like a gravy train. But they got canceled. So now this Trencher, the X-Men Bites 1994 Holiday Blowout, published by Black Ball Comics. That became the home of Trencher for like a year or so. Still got this great art style. We have a contents page here. And we start off with Testostertunes presents The Gentleman's Guide to Trenching with your host, Gideon Trencher. And he introduces the story. So I don't know if you can already tell, the art is slightly different. It's still very interesting, but not as over the top. It has its pros and cons. There's so many panels in that first miniseries that are just mind-blowing, but also incomprehensible. It's almost like Keith Giffen realized that maybe some of his storytelling was a little obfuscated, a little hard to follow. So that problem is gone here, but also there's not as many really over-the-top amazing panels. I mean, I think this art is amazing, but it's not as, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like revolutionary, like nuts, but still really nice art. Oh, this also has a lot more plot, actually a lot more jokes. That's the thing, Keith Giffen's known for his like funny comics. The Trencher miniseries doesn't have that many good jokes in it. It's more like a Lobo comic, macho one-liners, just like, oh, look how tough this guy is. Definitely has some humor in it. Definitely some funny jokes, like the villain named the Nasal Python and stuff like that. But this is more like a typical Keith Giffen comic. A lot more wittier. So basically, I guess Trencher's got a new assignment. He's got to kill Santa Claus. Goes to this department store. And he takes out Santa Claus with his gun. Nice stuff. And while he's walking away, Phoebe and him are kind of having this like debate about the merits of Christmas. Phoebe apparently really likes Christmas. And of course, as you can imagine, Trencher's all like, it's a bunch of malarkey. We cut away to this bag lady in an alley. And this weird guy shows up. He's got like a robot hand. Kind of talks weird. And he approaches her. And we hear her screams. Later on, we see these two tough detectives, and they're called down to the morgue because apparently they found the bag lady's body. The coroner tells them, he says, I've never seen anything quite like it. All of her rectal gases and intestinal gases have been removed from the body. And one of the detectives says, are you trying to tell us that she's the victim of some kind of fart vampire? Yes, that's what I'm saying. So stupid. But of course you could tell my level of maturity, even though I'm 56. I just think this is so funny. I was just cracking up in bed last night reading this. And he pulls the sheet off of the woman, the bag lady, and there's two giant puncture marks in her butt cheeks. So silly. Now we're back with Trencher. And he's just being his ordinary old self. Once again, Trencher from behind. It's his trademark look. So Trencher wants to chill out, so he goes to this strip club called Baked Beans and Babes, home of the trough dance. So nasty. Apparently there's this trough of beans that the girls swim around in. Phoebe even asks, like, you don't think they serve the beans from that trough, do you? And Trencher says, God, I hope so. So meanwhile, the detectives are on the case. They go to visit this proctologist, Dr. Tushman. Apparently he's like the big proctologist in the city. And we quickly realize it's the guy from the alley. He's got that weird robot hand. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what he's supposed to be, but he's always in this weird silhouette, almost as if he's like a shadow being. He's like one-dimensional. I don't know if that's just some technique, because these detectives don't act like he's weird or anything. They're like, what the hell's up with this guy? He's like a shadow being. So I don't know if that's just a stylistic quirk of Giffen. It looks kind of cool, though, I gotta say. So they're asking Dr. Tushman for advice. Basically, have you ever seen anything like this? Yada, yada. Okay, this is how crazy this comic gets. All of a sudden, the comic is interrupted. We see recurring panels of Trencher eating beans. And it's a memo from the editor of Black Ball Comics, Dave Elliott. He's writing to Keith Giffen to say, it's become such a cliche recently to have two tough cops as like backup characters in a superhero comic. Everyone's doing it, and we've already contacted the detectives, and we've made certain changes. And we realized that if we make the detectives female, it'll just add a different, interesting spin on this cliche. And so as we come back to the comic, all of a sudden, the two detectives, how do you think they're women, really? They look just like they did, except they have makeup on and new hairdos, and they're wearing these dresses, but they're still obviously very masculine looking. And some zany stuff. Much more sedate storytelling in this. Keith Giffen loves the grid. At least he did in his other art, in his other comics. And now he's kind of going back to that. Oh, so now we find out Dr. Tushman's origin story. I love this. By my buttocks betrayed, guest starring Blazing Glory. We even have a fake credit box. So apparently the government called in Dr. Tushman as a leading proctologist because the super soldier of the American government, Blazing Glory, somehow has this nuclear warhead lodged into his buttocks. And it's so nasty. There's all this like shit caked around it, like it's coming out of his butt. Oh my God. Like I said, this is the best comic for a 14, 15-year-old ever made. So he extracts the nuclear bomb. And more of that. So gnarly. But then the Blazing Glory released this radioactive fart. And it enshrouded Dr. Tushman. And, they rushed him to the hospital. Of course, he felt terrible. He said it was a nightmarish blur the next few days. And as he recovers, he realizes he has this hunger, a new hunger. And he's now a fart vampire. So stupid. And he starts hunting people, prostitutes and such, and disposing of their bodies after extracting their gases. Theories, once again, see how he's just an outline? Almost like he's caught between dimensions or something. But graphically, it's kind of nice. This like dense backgrounds, and he's just this negative space. So back at the Baked Beans and Babes, Trencher's taking a piss. He doesn't even have to take a piss. He has a waste disposal unit in his whatever synthezoid body. But he's just like, I just want to see if I can, try it. Of course, he can't do it. He doesn't know how to pee. He's not built for it. But it looks like he smashed the urinal. So when he comes out of the bathroom, Dr. Tushman is there, killing a bunch of the strippers, extracting their gases through their butt cheeks. So, of course, we're going to get a good old Donnybrook. More fighting, more amazing art. And now we're back to the two detectives. And now we're back to the fight scene. And basically Trencher finally wins. He tells Dr. Tishman, you know what happens when you light a fart? And I guess he blows him up. But Dr. Tishman actually is not killed, and he escapes. So Trencher tracks him to this toy warehouse. He's hiding out there. See, look at this just his outline, white, and the really dense art. This is really nice. Very graphically appealing. So here he lights the fart. This is when he says, did you ever light a fart? Fartoom. And then the whole warehouse explodes, throwing toys in every direction, flying through the sky. And Phoebe is like, oh, this is wonderful. This is going to be the most memorable Christmas ever. All of these children will wake up to find toys everywhere. This will be a Christmas the city will not soon forget. And then we see the headline of the paper the next day. Death toll mounts in Xmas reign of terror. And I guess these toys are flying from the sky and injuring people and killing them. This is so weird. It's mentioned in the contents page. I guess Laverne Kinzerski came up with this character called Speed. And he just wanted to nail the copyright. So Keith Giffen gave him a page. Laverne Kinzerski hired George Freeman, the great Canadian cartoonist, to draw him. It's just this giant copyright, 1993 TM. So I guess, don't try to bootleg Speed. Oh, this is so nice, though, this pinup. It's Dave Johnson, the great cover artist. Look at this. This is so zany. This guy with, dreadlocks that are, tendrils. I wish this was a story. And that's kind of a weird surprise. Michael T. Gilbert contributes a Mr. Monster, a holiday-themed Mr. Monster comic. Kind of funny little gag. Then we have a little coda to the story. Those two detectives, I can't remember. They died in the story, apparently, because they're angels in heaven. This is kind of like a funny ending here. And then Trencher, as narrator, bids us adieu. He says, mind the ads on your way out. We have a non-letters page. I guess nobody was writing in, so Keith Giffen made this a little funny thing, exhorting people to send in letters. Pathetic excuses we came up with to explain why this book is late. And some ads. That's it for Trencher, guys. As far as I know, these were the only Trencher comics ever published. I do think he appeared in some of the Black Ball anthologies. I think they even had a comic called Black Ball Comics. I could be wrong about that. But I don't know if these have ever been collected. Like I said, the miniseries is really dopey. Not much of any story at all. So I don't know how people think about these, if these are beloved, But I just can't get over this art. And, if this was any other artist, how dumb these comics are, the writing and stuff, I probably would have sold these years ago. But there's no way I'm ever going to sell these. It's so fun just to look at this amazing style that Keith Giffen developed. And like I said, such a shame that he abandoned it. He came up with this, and then after a year or two just said, I'm going to go back to an easier, simpler style. But I hope you guys enjoyed looking at it. I hope you appreciate this art as much as I do. It's pretty out there. It's very different. And I also hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.